So let's get to my next question for you. And this goes directly to all the people who are listening and are like, all right, well, forget this traditional publisher thing. I'm going to go put my own thing. I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to put it out there. So what I want to know is if someone self-publishes their book, what do you think are the three most important things for them to get right in order to quote unquote succeed? And I don't just mean maybe like get, like you said, this isn't just about getting rich, but however they define success, what three
Yeah.
things do they need to get right?
Well, first, you need a book that's quality,
Mhm.
quality in the eyes of your target reader. So it is a bit of a moving target. You have to know who you're trying to appeal to. That's a prerequisite to just everything else. If the book is flawed or slapdash, it's just going to sink like a stone because no one will recommend it. But publishing is still largely driven by word of mouth and recommendations. So you really want someone after they finish the book to go and recommend it to someone else without reservation. And quality is the way that you do that.
Mhm.
So then second would be to know if your book is quality. I want to go back to the audience issue. You have to know who you're writing for.
Mhm.
And I'll just echo what I said earlier. The audience shouldn't be anyone and everyone. You have to be pretty focused and disciplined. And also think about how are you going to reach that audience if you don't
Mhm.
already? Some people think something magical happens when they publish a book and the audience shows up. Not really.
Mhm.
You could, I guess, try and launch a huge advertising campaign through social media, but it's tough.
Yeah.
But knowledge of the readership, no matter how you plan to market and promote, just affects so many important decisions. What will you title it? What will the cover design look like? How are you going to price it? Where do you want to distribute? Should you do an audiobook edition? So a book's a product like any other, and it requires that level of market awareness to be
Mhm.
successful. And so to that point, the third thing I would mention is that you have to understand comp titles. So this is industry terminology for your competition, your comps. So what are the go-to books in your category already? Who are the go-to names? What do they get right? What are their weaknesses? What are they missing? So you need to be able to position and package the book so it looks like the other successful stuff that's already sitting on the shelf. But you also need to convey why readers might want your book, what's the way that it stands out or addresses a problem that hasn't been successfully tackled by the other competing titles.
Could you talk through I think that's great advice, and it's funny because it echoes something that I believe as well. Like, I think positioning and packaging is so important with anything, not just books, but whatever it is, courses, newsletters, your
Yeah.
blog, whatever it is, consulting, coaching,
Yes.
whatever you're doing, that positioning is so important. I'm curious. So let's say there was an author who was going to write, or wrote a romance novel, a mystery, whatever it was, right? And let's say they set out, maybe ideally they'd be more strategic from the beginning. But I'm guessing lots of people, especially in fiction, are like, I'm inspired to write this story,
Mhm.
right? So I've got this story. Now I want to try to publish it. How would you recommend them try to figure out kind of positioning themselves? Like study, it's one thing to, let's say I wrote a mystery novel. It's one thing for me to look at other mystery novels, but how do I figure out where mine fits and how I make it a little different at kind of after I've already written it? Or is it too late at that point?
In some regard, it's a little too late if you've already
Mm.
written it, but the self publishing community has gotten very scientific with some of this research. So I'll mention a couple tools. I don't know if they'll be too in
Yeah,
the
that'd be
weeds
great.
for folks, but there's a tool called Publisher Rocket. It's by a company called Kindlepreneur, which it's Amazon driven for the most part. So it's like
Mhm.
scraping data off Amazon and then giving you a window into what's succeeding by genre and category. And then there's a similar tool called Klytics, which is short for Kindle Analytics. That's
Mhm.
really just looking at the ebook market. I don't think I mentioned earlier, but for self-publishing authors of fiction, like 90% of your sales are going to be digital, mostly
Mhm.
ebook. So everyone's very focused on what's succeeding on Kindle in particular. And so those two tools by themselves, Klytics does genre and subgenre specific reports like the billionaire romance market. And he will break it down for you. Here's what the covers look like. Here are the
Wow.
keywords that you'll see in the marketing descriptions. Here are the price points. Here's the average length. And the reports are phenomenal. So if you're really
Wow.
interested in succeeding, you need to see what's already successful and then I would say most authors fail by deviating too far from the norm and what
Mhm.
people expect rather than they're not different enough.
Yeah, and I would imagine just using that example that, let's say you write a mystery romance novel that has a billionaire character, and let's say it's a female billionaire. The difference between doing that kind of research and looking at it and going, well, do I want to position this as a female mystery, or do I want to
Mhm.
position this as a billionaire mystery?
Right.
Same story, but that can make a big difference. And I guess having that data and having that information, that would be a way to sort of be more conscious in how and obviously that choice then affects your cover, your
Yes.
description, your marketing, your all of that stuff.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
and what would you do? One more question on this sort of self-publishing thing. Let's say that someone's self-publishing a book, they have some money to invest in, let's say they have $5,000, $10,000. I have no idea what the going rate for anything is.
Mhm.
But they have some money, but not a massive budget. What would be the things that you would say, these are the top things to spend your money on? Is it hiring an editor? Is it the cover? Is it marketing? Like, where would you put a sort of limited budget as a self-publisher?
Two big areas would be editing and then cover design.
Mm.
As far as cover design, I think you can get a really great cover that checks all the boxes probably for less than $1,000.
Okay.
Some of this depends on genre and what you're going for. I think sometimes
Mhm.
science fiction fantasy can be more expensive because you might
Mhm.
be hiring an illustrator. For editing, that's where the costs really skyrocket because to get a talented editor on board to do an intensive edit, like something that produces a meaningfully better book, I mean, that could
Mhm.
easily cost $3, 4, $5,000 and up.
Mhm.
Now, it's possible that you can get an editor on the cheap from your community or someone who's just, they really understand your readership. I would value that
Mhm.
more than just correcting grammar. That's not going to help your book sell more. You're really looking for someone who understands. If you make these changes, you're going to end up with a better quality book.
How do I figure out if I don't have a pre-existing relationship with an editor, or maybe have someone I trust who's like, this person's perfect? How do I figure out kind of who's going to be a good editor for my book?
This is where I feel really bad for people coming into the writing and publishing community because there are tens of thousands of people just waiting to take your money and help
I was
edit
going to
your
say,
book.
there's a million editors out there, right?
Yeah, and they are not created equal, and
Hmm.
cost is not necessarily correlated with value or quality.
And there's no real way to know until they start doing the work. Like, how would you actually know if it's going to be a fit?
So what I recommend to folks, and I should say I do have a resource list I'm happy to share with
Mhm.
anyone who asks of editors I recommend as a starting point. But I would suggest reaching out to at least 3, 5, even more editors, describing your project or using whatever onboarding tools they offer. A good editor has a strong onboarding process, and you can even
Mhm.
use that as a criteria for choosing because it shows that they've been around for a while and they understand how
Right.
to filter out the people who aren't a good fit. It's important to compare and contrast because, especially if you're new to all of this, you might not quite understand what a good editor author relationship feels like or looks like. And what you want is great chemistry where you really trust this person. You can tell they understand your vision. And they're not going to be changing the work so it's unrecognizable to you. They're going to be making it a better version of itself. So some editors will do a sample edit.
Mhm.
In fact, I would say the vast majority will do a sample
Mhm.
where it's like 10 pages or a chapter. You might have to pay for it, which is
Mhm.
fine. But then you can tell, are you enthusiastic at the feedback they're
Right.
giving and you feel
Like,
you
did
want
they
it
make it better?
exactly. Or
Yes.
are they giving you feedback that makes you realize, oh my gosh, I need to change all these things and I want to go do it right now because I see what a difference it will make.
Cool.